Okay, today is June the 18th, Sunday evening, about 30 minutes after the weekly close. Let's do the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. So let's go ahead and start off with the news events. We don't have anything too crazy to worry about this week. On Monday, we have a U.S. holiday, so it'll be interesting to see what the flows coming into crypto are going to be like with U.S. equities not trading. Next, on Thursday, we have two different speakers from the FOMC. We have Whaler and Powell. That's going to be the main event for the week. Definitely anticipate a little bit of extra juice on Thursday, so be aware. Then on Friday, we also have the PMI, which is more or less a non-event. So that's pretty much it for the news events. TLDR is we do not care. Let's go ahead and get into the boomer markets. Let's cover the benchmarks. Let's start off with the NASDAQ. So where we're at with the NAS is definitely late into the trend, feeling like it's overextended at this point. So like I've talked about for a couple weeks now, you want to lean into trend continuation on any asset classes that are going to be strong like this. Selling into them is foolish in my opinion. So I have no interest in trying to pick the top at any point. At some point, the NAS is going to have to consolidate and potentially have a pullback because it's at the point where it's borderline parabolic now. So whenever that pullback does come and that consolidation does come, I highly suggest, being in buy the dip mode. That gets invalidated more or less when the quarterly gets lost. So I don't really foresee that happening. So the TLDR and the NAS is definitely want to be leaning into buy the dip. It's more or less the same thing with the S&P, except this S&P has much healthier structure in my opinion because it hasn't traded up as far as the NAS has. So both are trading into their major FTAs right now, where I expect resistance to be had. So I wouldn't be leaning super bullish on any of these things with my execution. I would be more or less wanting to wait for consolidations or pullbacks to resume the bull trend. So that's pretty much it. I'm not yet actively trading either of these indexes, so I'm really just going to be remaining focused on the higher time frame. So that's pretty much it for these guys. So let's go ahead and move over into crypto, where we can get a little bit more detail oriented. So first things first, let's cover Bitcoin on the higher time frame. So where I'm at with Bitcoin is, it's been probably 4 months now that I've been waiting for us to trade into the 25K region so that I could pivot back to being bullish again. I've been, risk off all throughout Q2 more or less, and I think that the pivot point is happening. So this is more or less what I'm expecting. We got a nice rally last week, and a lot of people started to pivot back to being bullish. I don't think that it really makes sense to do that. So basically, in the big picture, I think we're entering the bid zone. In the more short term, meaning what's going to happen next week and the week following, I still think we have some bloody chop ahead of us. So more or less on the higher time frame, I think that we're going to continue to round out into the low volume node and then start to trade up again. And the thesis as far as higher time frame goes is that we should get a dead cat bounce at the very least towards 27 or 28. And then, we can play it from there. So the expected value on, longs into the 24 and 25K region still is quite high in my opinion, because even if we're not going to see trend continuation, we should get a dead cat. And if we do see trend continuation, that means we're trading up towards 33, 34. So either way, I think that the risk to reward and the probabilities are favorable for these setups as we trade into this support zone. If you pay attention to sentiment, people have just been, going back to the Bitcoin chart, people have just been getting actually brutalized during this period. Buying the dip, pivoting to bullish here has been quite obvious. And the main reason, the main way that we're hurting the market participants is just more or less through time capitulation and lack of volatility, which is something I talked about at the beginning of this, that I did not at all expect it to resolve like the last one did. This is, much more in line with the slow rounding out and hammocking pattern that we talk about in the Paragon. And, more or less that's the expectation. So I think that we're going to slowly chop people up the rest of Q2, and hopefully the plan plays out where we resume the bull trend in Q3. That's pretty much it for the higher time frame. For more information, check out the Paragon group with the link below, where I cover everything from how I trade to how you can develop your own style. So as far as the lower time frame picture goes, everything's pretty bearish throughout all of Q2. All the VWAP structuring's bearish, and we rejected from this, almost month-long value. So we're more or less fighting for, reacceptance back into this value. So kind of where we're at right now is we have successfully reclaimed the June VWAP, which is one of the first, signs that we could be looking for. I'm definitely not convinced that we want to be leaning super bullish into this yet. I think that it's going to take some time for the bottom to round out, and structure's definitely, favoring downwards, right? The only really thing that's supporting upwards trading is the June VWAP, which more or less, doesn't really matter that much, right? Being, 2 weeks old. So I think that, lower time frame still says to trade downwards. There isn't too much else to really cover on that. One other point that we're going to make here, let's pull up the TPO, is around the weekend comp, right? So we had our nice little weekend comp set up. We now have since broken down from that comp on the open. Basically, seeing how we play out during this Asia sesh right now is going to be really important. If we fail to reaccept the comp, and if the fresh weekly VWAP starts to print bearishly, that's definitely going to be what I'm going to be using, for my my directional bias going into the week. If we start to break down from the weekend comp, I'm going to be leaning bearishly, targeting down into, the 24s basically. If we break upwards from it, then, I think that we can successfully trade a little bit higher for, our next lower high within the trend basically. So TLDR of everything on Bitcoin is on the higher time frame. I think we are in the process of this rounding out pattern. However, I think that we're going to continue to bleed down and chop people up in the process. Definitely take note of the idea of time capitulation. This is the main way that we force people to capitulate in markets. The early waves, people capitulate because of heavy selling, but a lot of people can really withstand that because they always have the idea that the market's going to come back. And then the next way we force people out of the market is through just basically nothing happening. So following pain, nothing happens and just people give up that way. So that's pretty much it for the corn. And yeah, we should have some good stuff this week. So good luck everybody and cheers.